Ready to dive in?
Always.
We've got a quite the mix of topics to unpack today.
Yeah, it's all over the place, huh?
From what I can tell, it seems like we're going to be talking about the future a lot.
Definitely some future forward stuff.
We've got articles about virtual reality investments, even gaming.
Sounds about right.
So where do you want to start?
Well, since we're talking about the future, we've got to talk about the future of sports.
Okay, yeah. This article about Alexis Ohanian investing in women's sports particularly caught my eye.
It's a really interesting development, right?
For sure.
Like he's putting his money where his mouth is and saying, hey,
Right.
women's sports are on the rise.
It's not just the right thing to do.
Yeah.
It's a smart business decision.
Exactly.
And this whole thing with Angel City FC, it's really cool to see this revenue sharing model where the athletes themselves have more control.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the money.
Right.
It's also about the platform.
Yeah.
I mean, he's really leveraging social media to build a fan base.
For sure. And that's so important these days.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially with how fragmented everything has become.
Totally.
Okay, so we're talking about investing in the future of sports.
Yeah.
But what about investing in the future of reality itself?
Exactly.
This article about Meta's Orion glasses kind of blew my mind.
Yeah, the stuff they're talking about with those glasses is...
I don't even know if I can wrap my head around it.
It's like straight out of science fiction.
It is.
Eye-tracking hand gestures, like you can control interfaces with your...
Wait, hold on. You're telling me I can scroll through my emails just by looking at them?
That's the idea.
I don't know how I feel about that.
I mean, it's pretty wild, right?
Like on the one hand, it's incredible. On the other hand, it's like...
Yeah.
What if I accidentally spawned, like, my ex's photo from 5 years ago with my eyeball?
I mean, there's going to be a learning curve, right?
There's always a learning curve with technology.
But think about the possibilities.
Yeah.
The article mentioned using it for cooking.
Oh.
Like, imagine having the recipe projected right there on your counter.
Hands-free.
Hands-free, step-by-step instructions.
I could get behind that.
Right?
Although I do have to say,
yeah,
the price tag they're talking about...
It's steep.
It's a lot.
High-end laptop territory.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm ready to drop that kind of cash on a pair of glasses.
We'll have to see how it plays out.
For sure, early adopters, they're always willing to pay a premium.
That's true.
But for the rest of us...
Yeah.
We'll have to wait and see.
Exactly.
Speaking of things that might be a bit pricey.
Oh, you mean?
The PS5 Pro.
That's right. The supposed gaming game changer.
I mean, the graphics they're talking about.
Oh, yeah. It's all about the ray tracing.
It sounds impressive.
It's supposed to make the lighting and the reflections in games look like unbelievably realistic.
Now that you mention it, I have noticed some pretty impressive lighting effects in some of the newer games I've played.
See, it's doing its job.
I don't know if I need to upgrade.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, that's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it worth the upgrade?
Especially if I don't even have one of those fancy 8K TVs.
The article even said that unless you have a top-of-the-line TV,
right,
you might not even notice a huge difference.
Okay, so maybe I'll hold off on that for now.
Probably a good call.
But you know what else caught my eye?
What's that?
This article about Ireland.
Oh, yeah. What about it?
They're using tax revenue from big tech companies to fund all sorts of interesting projects.
Like what kind of projects?
Well, they're really focused on renewable energy infrastructure.
Smart.
Which makes sense, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Especially with all the tech companies setting up shop over there.
They need that sustainable energy.
Exactly.
A win-win.
And they're really playing the long game.
How so?
Well, they're leveraging their relationship with the U.S.
Okay.
They had that whole 100 years of diplomacy thing recently.
Oh, right.
And it seems like they're using that to their advantage.
I see.
They're creating this stable, attractive environment for businesses.
And it seems to be working.
Right.
Yeah.
Their economy is booming.
Good for them.
But speaking of the future of work...
Oh, this is where it gets interesting.
This last article about organizational change?
Yeah, what about it?
It kind of left me feeling a little uneasy.
Really? How come?
It's just this whole shift from nonprofit to for-profit.
It can be a tough transition.
It seems messy.
Yeah.
And then there's that whole thing with Mira Marathi and Sam Altman.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that was a whole thing.
Talk about a leadership shakeup.
For sure. And it really highlights the challenges of this kind of transition.
Definitely.
Especially in a field like AI,
Yes.
where everything is moving so fast.
It makes you wonder about the people who work at these companies.
Yeah, what happens to them during these big changes?
I mean, one day, your company's all about the greater good.
Right.
And the next, it's all about the bottom line.
And that can be tough to swallow.
It's a lot to process.
Absolutely.
I just can't help but think about the impact on morale.
For sure, it's bound to have an impact.
Especially when you have these sudden changes at the top.
People need stability.
It's like when your favorite band completely changes their sound.
I feel that.
Are you still a fan, or do you move on?
Tough call,
A
right?
tough call.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it can be tough for folks to adapt when their whole work environment changes so suddenly.
And it makes you think about how these companies communicate these big changes.
Well, definitely transparency is key.
Because it's not just about the bottom line.
Right, it's about the people, too.
These are human beings we're talking about.
Exactly, and I think that's something that sometimes gets lost in the shuffle.
For sure, especially in the tech world.
It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of the latest gadget or algorithm.
But we can't forget about the human element.
Absolutely, and I think this whole story with Mira Marathi,
Yeah.
it really highlights that.
Because even with the best intentions,
Right.
sometimes these transitions, they just don't go smoothly.
And it can be messy.
It can be really messy.
So where does that leave us? Well, I think it leaves us with more questions than answers.
That's usually how it goes with these deep dives.
That's true.
But seriously, I mean, we're talking about some pretty big changes here.
We are.
The way we work, the way we live, even the way we experience reality.
And it's all happening so fast.
It's like we're building the airplane while we're flying it.
That's a great way to put it.
And I don't know about you, but
Yeah.
I'm not always a fan of flying,
It can be a bit turbulent,
to say the least.
but I think the key here
Yeah.
is to remember that we have a choice.
A choice.
A choice in how we engage with all of this.
Okay. I like where you're going with this.
We can choose to be swept away by the current,
Right.
or we can choose to learn how to navigate it.
So it's not about resisting change.
Not necessarily.
It's about being mindful about how we adapt to it.
Exactly. It's about being intentional about the future we want to create.
I like that, being intentional.
Because the future isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we actively shape.
So how do we do that?
How do we shape the future?
Yeah, I mean, it all seems so big and overwhelming.
I hear you. It can definitely feel that way.
But you said it yourself. We have a choice.
We do?
So how do we make the right choices?
Well, I think it starts with asking the right questions. It's not always easy, but it's essential.
So give me an example.
We'll take this whole thing with Meta's Orion glasses.
Okay.
Yeah, we talked about the cool features, the eye tracking, the hand gestures.
Right. Sounds amazing on paper.
But we also have to ask ourselves, what are the potential downsides?
Like what?
Well, for starters, privacy concerns.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that.
Right. I mean, if these glasses can track our eye movements, what else can they track?
That's a good point.
And then there's the whole issue of digital overload.
Okay. Yeah, we're already glued to our phone.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
Do we really need another device that's constantly vying for our attention?
It's a slippery slope.
It is, and I think it's important to have these conversations now.
Before it's too late.
Exactly, because once the technology is out there in the world...
There's no putting the genie back in the bottle.
Precisely.
So we've talked about the potential downsides of something like the Orion glasses.
Yeah.
But what about the upsides?
Well, I think one of the most exciting things about this technology is its potential to break down barriers.
Barriers.
Yeah, like imagine being able to connect with people from all over the world.
Okay.
In a way that feels truly immersive.
Like you're actually there with them.
Exactly. Or imagine being able to learn new skills
Okay.
with the help of augmented reality tutorials.
Like having your own personal tutor right there in the room with you.
Exactly. The possibilities are pretty much endless.
It's mind-blowing when you really think about it.
It is, and I think that's what makes this whole conversation so exciting.
It's not just about the technology itself.
Right.
It's about how we choose to use it.
Exactly. Technology is a tool.
And like any tool, it can be used for good or for evil.
It all depends on the hands that wield it.
So I guess the question is...
What kind of future do we want to create?
That's something for you to ponder.
It's a question worth considering.
It is. And on that note, I think we're going to wrap up this deep dive.
Until next time.
Always a pleasure chatting with you.
Likewise.
Thanks for joining us on this journey into the future.